Politico, of all places, Politico has decided to publish a complete and utter fluff piece on behalf of Senator Kyrsten Sinema, someone who's done quite a bit of damage to herself in regard to the Democratic electorate or Democratic constituency in her own state of Arizona. In fact, if you poll Republican voters in the state of Arizona, only about 40% of them have a disapproval of her job performance. When you look at other Democrats in that state, the number jumps up to 75%. I give you that number because Kyrsten Sinema standing in the way of passing Joe Biden's social spending bill, which would provide paid family leave, which would call for lower drug prices, which would, do things that would really improve the lives of Arizona. She stood in the way of that. And now here comes Politico to essentially do positive PR for her and to completely ignore how her political corruption is what really motivated her behavior. So let's get to it. They write, Senator John Thune, the GOP whip, confirmed in an interview he's pressed Sinema to join his party multiple times. But Sinema's goal in an evenly split Senate isn't to toss away Democrats' majority. Despite enduring months of criticism from progressives on her policy positions, rock solid protection of the filibuster, and yes, even her fashion choices. So, she says, why would I want to join the Republican Party? No. My behavior has nothing to do with wanting to agree with Republicans, which might be true. Because really what's motivating her is corporate donors. We'll get to that in just a second, because I always love to come correct with the receipts and the evidence. But she's also trying to make it seem like she does all the negotiating on good faith. In fact, she says this, I've been concerned at the push that happens in both parties, this push to have no disagreements, to only have unity, or to only speak with one voice. And some will say, oh, that is our strength. Having some disagreement is normal, it is real, it is human, and it's an opportunity for us as mature beings to work through it. Yeah, but how about answering questions from your constituents in regard to abandoning them on key policy issues that you campaigned on? She claimed that she wanted to raise the federal minimum wage. She claimed to really care about responding to the climate crisis appropriately. I mean, that was actually one of the main things that she campaigned on. She also was a Ralph Nader supporting progressive at one point who claimed to be concerned about forever wars. She claimed that she wanted corporations to pay their fair share in taxes. Now all of a sudden she's changed her opinion on all of that. Did Politico ask her why? No. Did Politico challenge her narrative here where she's pretending to be negotiating on good faith? No, they didn't challenge it at all. It was just a giant fluff piece. I mean, the way that they decided to fillet her here is honestly incredibly shameful. And I wish I could ask these reporters, do you feel good about it? How do you feel after you put out a piece like this? Do you recognize that you're not really doing journalism here, that you're providing a fluff piece and a positive PR article for Kyrsten Sinema? They probably told themselves all sorts of stories about how they're doing the right thing here, but they're giving their readers one side of a story coming from the very person who has a personal interest in rehabilitating her image. But let me give you more. She decided to criticize Democrats for having a bold vision for this country. In fact, she says that she will criticize her party for its complicity in setting unachievable, sky-high expectations, just like the Republicans who promised to repeal Obamacare under former President Donald Trump. The difference is repealing Obamacare was unpopular, but the policy proposals coming from progressives and the Biden administration poll really well. There's a big difference there, but let me continue. A $3.5 trillion social spending bill, sweeping elections reform, a $15 an hour minimum wage, and changes to the filibuster rules were always a long shot, with Sinema and Manchin as the definitive Democratic votes in the Senate. Oh, was it always a long shot, Politico? Why? Why was it a long shot with Manchin and Sinema? Can you get into that? What are the motivating factors here? What is persuading them to vote against legislation, to vote against policy that their constituents overwhelmingly support? Can you get into that? Can you challenge her narrative here? No, they didn't do it at all, but let me continue. They then quote Sinema as saying this in regard to the Democratic Party. This is so rich. You're either honest or you're not honest. So just tell the truth and be honest and deliver that which you can deliver. Kyrsten Sinema, who is now on multiple videos running away from her own constituents because she doesn't want to answer questions about her corporate corruption, telling us about honest, like it's so rich to hear anything regarding honesty from her. But she's very bold, very brave. Let me give you more. The fact checks never happened in this piece. So you should read it for yourselves, don't take my word for it. They just allowed Sinema to say whatever she wanted to say, and they took it at face value. They provided no context, no fact checking. And I do want to maybe help the Politico reporters out a little bit, because look, I get it, this job is hard. Sometimes we get things wrong, sometimes we miss things. We were covering Sinema's corruption for months. In fact, why don't we go to this video of Sinema telling everyone about her corruption herself. This is while Sinema was speaking before the Chamber of Commerce, and she just loves being in tune with the business interests. Let's watch.
The way I make decisions on behalf of Arizona and for our constituents is by listening to the business leaders who will be impacted by these decisions. I can tell you that many Arizona businesses have already reached out to my office, and I know have discussed the concerns that they have with the PRO Act with some of the folks who are on our call today. We are watching carefully because some of the PRO Act provisions, especially in regards to the worker classification test for independent contractors, could become a part of other legislative ideas. So I would ask all the members who are joining us today to please stay involved with my office and help me by sharing information about how this would impact you and your company so that I can go back to Senate leadership and folks on both sides of the aisle to discuss the concerns that Arizona businesses have.
This is at the US Chamber of Commerce. These are business interests that do not want to pay more in taxes. And she's just brazenly saying, make sure you guys are hitting me up. Reach out to my office. We'll talk, because that's how I prioritize things. That's how I make decisions about legislation. And you know what talking really means. In fact, if you don't know what talking really means, Politico, let me help you out with that as well. Here's another video we did on Kyrsten Sinema and the pharmaceutical companies corrupting her. And remember, the Build Back Better agenda initially had a provision that would allow for Medicare to negotiate drug prices directly with pharmaceutical companies, allowing for lower drug prices. We pay 2 to 3 times more for pharmaceutical drugs in the United States compared to other developed countries, right? So doesn't it make sense to support a provision that would allow for Medicare to negotiate drug prices? No, Kyrsten Sinema was against that. Why was she against it? Well, she loves that sweet, sweet cash from pharmaceutical companies. Let's watch. Sinema formed a congressional caucus, by the way, to raise awareness of the benefits of personalized medicine in February. Then soon after that, employees of pharmaceutical companies donated $35,000 to her campaign committee. Now, it doesn't stop there. I want to give you specific examples. Amgen gave her $5,000. So did Genentech and Merck. Sanofi, these are all pharmaceutical companies. Pfizer and Eli Lilly all gave $2,500 each. Each of those companies has invested heavily in personalized medicine, which sounds great, right? Except it promises individually tailored drugs that can cost a patient hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absurd.
And also, it's worth noting that for the 2019 to 2020 election cycle through March, this isn't even when she's running for re-election, political action committees run by employees of drug companies and their trade groups gave her $98,500 in campaign funds. I mean, I just think that kind of data, that kind of information is important. It's important to provide that context for your readers. No? Am I wrong? Because journalism is not supposed to be like glorified stenography. It's not supposed to be like, oh, here's a person in a position of power. You tell me what you want me to publish. That's literally what they did. Nothing more than a puff piece, just providing positive PR. This is journalism? What is this? I wanna go to the last graphic here because she makes sure to double down on this notion that she negotiates on policies on good faith. She says, if you're in the middle of negotiating things that are delicate or difficult, doing it in good faith directly with each other is the best way to get to an outcome. I'm still in the process of negotiating the second provision of the president's agenda, and I don't negotiate in the press. It would be difficult to answer questions from real journalists. It would be difficult to talk to people who are actually informed about the motivating factors for someone like Kyrsten Sinema. She runs away from people like that. We have several videos showing you running away from people who have specific questions about her corporate greed, her close ties, her coziness to corporations. Just that Politico decides to omit all of that in their reporting and treat her as if she's a good faith actor who's just trying to do the right thing by her constituents. No, that's not what's motivating her. What Politico is doing here is PR. And if they want to do PR, go work for a PR firm, go be a publicist. But don't pass this garbage off as journalism. This is not journalism, it's not anything to be proud of. It's just shameful and honestly creates more distrust toward our institutions. When you hear people raging about the media, about the news industry and how they lie to people, this is the kind of stuff they're talking about. Stop running interference for corporate goons. If you're doing that, you're not a journalist, you're not a journalistic organization, you're a joke.